Dear, said Lady Argent absently, without a trace of meaning in her voice or manner, and you know I never had any sisters or brothers, so Ludovic has never had an aunt. At least, dear Fergus had one sister, but she was older than he was, a good deal, and so very Scotch. Not that I mean for a moment that her being Scotch would prevent her from being an aunt as well. In fact, I believe the Scotch think more about relationships than we do. Blood is thicker than water and all that, you know, dear, and kith and kin, whatever that may mean, which I always think sounds so very Scotch, but she really wasn't at all like an aunt to Ludovic. Just called him my brother's child, you know, and sent him a little book from time to time. Very Calvinistic, and Lady Argent, shaking her head, and I always burnt them, even in those days, though he was far too young to read, poor darling. In fact, she died before he was 5 years old. Well, I'm only too delighted to do aunt by proxy, said Bertha good-humouredly. I've been auntie to a good many young people in my time, though the rising generation generally prefers Cousin Bertie. I remember ages ago asking those two poor mites, Rosamund and Francie, what they'd like to call me. Do you remember my bringing them over here to say goodbye to you, Sybil? Yes, indeed, so good and pathetic, poor little dears, said Lady Argent tenderly, and both so pretty, weren't they? Rosamund has rather lost her looks, I'm sorry to say. Bertha was looking keenly at her friend, who remained serenely unconscious of her scrutiny. Don't you think so, Sybil? She's rather too thin, and I don't like those great shadows under her eyes, but I'm sure she'll always be a very pretty creature. So like her mother, you know, though I always thought that Mrs. Grantham spoiled herself with those enormous earrings, especially in the country, somehow. I don't quite know, Lady Argent thoughtfully pursued, with an air of far greater interest than any she had bestowed on the subject of Rosamund's looks, why it is that I have always disliked earrings. I do so hope it isn't prejudice, which I always think so very narrow-minded and shocking. But I never could bear the picture of Saint Cecilia that everyone likes so much because of those great things hanging from her ears. Sitting at the organ, dear, you know. Though I've no doubt it was the fashion, and quite proper and everything in those days, and in that country. My dear Sybil. Surely Cecilia was a Roman virgin? You talk as though she'd lived in some unheard of region. Well, I never can remember quite where Tyre and Sidon and Syracuse and all those places are, was Lady Argent's rather surprising reply. I know St. Paul was always going there, but then he really did travel a great deal, Bertie, even for nowadays. I never can bear to think how dreadfully inconvenient their traveling arrangements must have been then, though, of course, it made it all the more meritorious. Bertha made a decided effort to turn the conversation from channels which appeared to her unnecessarily scriptural. It's such a comfort to see Rosamund looking better every day. There's nothing like youth, my dear, when all's said and done. After all, in spite of the grief and trouble which seem so bitter to them, they have everything to look forward to all like before them. It's a wonderful thing to be young, Sybil. She sighed. I always think that it depends so much, said Lady Argent cryptically, and with the diffidence which she always brought to any opinion that differed from her friend's. But, of course, when I think of Frances, poor little darling, though I can't think why I call her poor, for she's far better off than we are, and must have a much higher place in heaven than one can ever hope for oneself, but there it is, Bertie, I am quite sure that she was a very privileged soul in every possible way. Now I'm going to shock you, declared Bertha with a kind of deliberate enjoyment in her tone, but I should have had a much higher opinion of Frances if she'd given up her own way and stayed quietly at home until she was of an age to judge for herself. Oh yes, My dear, I know it's a dreadful thing to say now, but I'm nothing if not outspoken, as you know, and I can't pretend it isn't in me. One looks upon Francie as a little victim, and so she was, poor child, but it was all owing to her own self-will. Lady Argent flushed, looked doubtful, and then said gently and very characteristically, "So brave of you, Bertie dear, to be so unconventional and say it all out, because of course I know you loved her just as if she'd been your very own. Only you know it really was a vocation, if ever there was one, and Father Anselm was very much impressed with her, and told me so himself long before there was any question of her entering. Such a very holy man, Bertie, and extremely clever. Plain chant, you know, and all that kind of thing so wonderful, I always think, though of course I'm no judge at all, since I never really like good music, only tunes I've known all my life, which are not plain chant at all, as you may imagine, since they've only revived it quite within the last few years. The Holy Father wishes it so much, for the Church, which of course makes one like it, though I always think otherwise, it might strike one as the least little bit dreary. So very little tune, you know. Yes, I know what you mean. Sybil, do you know you're getting very discursive? I dare say, dear, said Lady Argent placidly, a train of thought is such a very difficult thing to follow, I always think I mean another person's, of course. One's own is naturally easy enough. Bertha did not look as though she shared this conviction, nor did she where the tangled skein of Lady Argent's meditations was concerned. I've got a little train of thought in my own head at the present moment, she said tentatively. I wonder if you can guess what I'm at, Sybil. No, dear, I'm sure I can't. I never was the least bit of good at guessing anything at all. Don't you remember when riddles were so much the fashion, and people were always asking one why did Rider Haggard, and ridiculous questions of that sort? I never could get the answers right, even then, and there was one dreadful thing that dear Fergus was so fond of about a ton of lead and a ton of feathers. I'm sure you must have heard it, Bertie. I don't think so. A ton of lead? Are you sure you don't mean a herring and a half? Laughed Bertha. Oh, yes, though I know that one too. The question, I mean, not the answer, of course. But this was something about a ton of lead and a ton of feathers being upset out of a boat or somewhere, into the sea, and which would sink fastest. And, of course, I always answered lead. Because one knows perfectly well that feathers float and lead sinks. But it always turned out to be the wrong answer. My dear Sybil. Bertie laughed helplessly. Yes, indeed, said Lady Argent, still in melancholy retrospect, I once thought I would be very clever and surprise Fergus so silly, my dear, because nothing ever surprised dear Fergus, not even when one of the Marrays had twin foals. He said he'd always expected it all along, which one knows was quite impossible, but so very Scotch of him, wasn't it? Anyhow, one day I thought I'd get that dreadful riddle answered once and for all, so instead of saying as one naturally would, and as I'm bound to say I'd said quite a dozen times before, that of course the lead would sink soonest, I suddenly said, the feathers. And I dare say it served me quite right, because I certainly didn't in the least see how it could be the right answer, and was only pretending, which I suppose was rather hypocritical of me. But Fergus simply roared with laughter, and told everybody what I'd said for weeks and weeks afterwards. Sybil, Sybil, you'll be the death of me. Bertha was absolutely mopping her eyes, streaming from her unaffected merriment. Lady Argent looked at her affectionately. Dear Bertie, I do like to hear your laugh again. It is an infectious chuckle, I believe, returned Mrs. Tregaskis, but I've always had a huge appreciation for the funny side of things. It's helped me all through life, Sybil. I'm not an irreligious woman, though my religion is perhaps not a conventional one, but I really believe the whole of my creed could be embodied in one word: smile. I do believe in smiling. It cheers others, helps oneself, and does good all round. I don't mind owning to you that a good many people, one way and another, have told me they blessed my knack of smiling. I'm sure one laugh is worth 10 sermons, very often. Sermons are so often a little difficult to understand, said Lady Argent apologetically. I sometimes find myself quite hazy in church, though I dare say that's mostly from the long drive, which makes me so dreadfully sleepy. You have to go all the way to Chepstow, haven't you? Yes, and dear Ludovic is so angelic about driving me in. Not that he often allows me to go early, but then that's because he thinks it tires me, not because he minds the distance. Your relationship is a very beautiful one, said Bertha thoughtfully. Oh, my dear, it is, cried Lady Argent very simply. I often wonder what I've done to deserve a son like Ludovic, when I see how dreadfully other people are worried by their children. She colored suddenly at the allusion, and then hurried on. It's not because I brought him up beautifully or anything of that sort, either. I never could have theories, though I bought hundreds of little books from the very first day that I knew I was going to have a baby. But I always forgot, and then dear Fergus, who was nothing if not determined, so very Scotch, you know, dear, used to say that little books were all rubbish, and if I wanted to know how to bring up a child, Solomon had said all there was to be said upon the subject. Not that he would ever have laid a finger upon Ludovic himself, you know. The only time the poor darling was ever punished, when he was about 6 years old, I had to do it myself, with a bedroom slipper. And I cried so dreadfully that Ludovic said in the middle of it, "It's all right, Mummy, don't cry, you're hardly hurting me at all." So touching, I always thought. I sometimes think that bringing up hasn't anything at all to do with it, said Bertha dryly. I brought up my own child as well as I knew how, and practically brought up the other 2 girls as well. And look at my Hazel, Sybil. She hasn't one thought for me. She came home when her father died and stayed a week, and her husband came for one night. She was sweet enough and affectionate enough, Hazel's always been that, but do you suppose that I didn't know that the whole of her thoughts were at Morley's Wood, with Guy and the babies, after the first day or 2 were over? Perhaps it's natural, but it's very bitter, Sybil. I don't ask for impossibilities, I couldn't have lived with them, and I should never wish to, but they never even suggested it. Lady Argent said nothing at all, and took Bertha's hand into hers. It's the fuss over her marriage that she's never forgotten, said Bertha bitterly, and yet God knows she can afford to. She's taken her own way, and is happy in it, and her father and I forgave her long ago, if she wanted forgiveness, for her self-will and disobedience. There was a long silence. Well, said Bertha at last, Rosamund is the only one who has come back to the old nest after all. Hazel's gone right away from me, I know that well enough, in spite of all her loving letters, and won't ever come back. Little Francie took her own way and followed a will-o'-the-wisp that she thought was the star in the east, and I tell you, Sybil, that before she'd been in that place 6 months she was just as remote and far away from us as though she'd been in another world. Why, her very language wasn't ours any longer, her whole scale of values had shifted. Someone who saw her once after she had entered told me it was like talking to someone with a thick wall of impenetrable glass all round. You could see her, but you could never get near, never be in touch again. You are nearer now, perhaps, softly said Lady Argent. Who knows? But the child that's come back to me is Rosamund. And I shan't fail her, Sybil. No, Bertie, said Lady Argent lovingly. You would never fail her. Never, repeated Bertha with curiously intense conviction. You see, apart from everything else, she's the one of the three that has sought me when other things failed her. It's an appeal that one doesn't forget. I have to give, you know, Sybil. I'm made that way and Rosamund has every claim on me. There was silence again, and Bertha only broke it to take her departure with a brisk matter-of-factness that seemed to draw a swift curtain across some intimate threshold to a sanctuary where even her own footsteps seldom penetrated. "XXX Hazel and the babies are coming for a week," announced Bertha triumphantly. "How delightful! But oh, dear Mrs. Tregaskis, have you considered where you're going to put them?" urgently demanded Miss Blandflower, wearing an expression of anxiety. "Ask my landlady, Minnie." Miss Blandflower's expression, now complicated by the addition of a puzzled smile, was turned towards Rosamund. "The little balcony room for Hazel, of course, and the spare room is quite large enough for nurse and the baby, but Dickie he can have a cot in my room," said Dickie's grandmother quickly, "unless Hazel wants him with her." "What about a nursery?" "They'll be out most of the day, in this glorious weather, but it gets dark early, and then for meals there's the attic," said Rosamund rather slowly. "It's very big and light, and can easily be cleared. It used to be a sort of nursery." She remained a moment reflective, and Mrs. Tregaskis eyed her kindly and observantly. "Fancy," ejaculated Minnie in the silence. "Yes," said Rosamund. "It makes a very nice room, and there are 2 windows." She thought to herself that she would rather like the attic, where she and Francie had played together, to be a nursery again. "You'd rather like it to be a nursery again, wouldn't you?" said Bertha gently. The attic was made ready, and 2 days later the engaging Dickie was trotting round it and gazing through the big dormer windows onto the garden below. Hazel, radiantly pretty and good-humored, showed the caressing appreciation and gratitude for the welcome prepared that Rosamund had never known her fail to bestow. She played with the babies, gardened with Minnie, and answered all Bertha's half-tentative questions with the same joyous unreserve of manner. If, in that very unreserve, there was a withholding, Rosamund thought it a most unconscious one. To Rosamund, Hazel gave of her loving way and impulses freely. Above all, she gave her, by a sort of tender instinct, what Rosamund needed most, the care of Dickie. It was Dickie who, unknowing enough, completed what Mrs. Mulholland, with her kind, inadequate goodness, had begun after Francis' death. Rosamund came to realize that, on the day that she received news of Mrs. Mulholland's death, she was in the garden with Ludovic Argent, as so often now, under the big Spanish chestnut from which still hung, stained and creaking, the frayed ropes and wide seat of the swing that had belonged to her and to Francis. "Mrs. Mulholland is dead," she said, with wet eyes. "She just died in her sleep, on Sunday night. They've written from the convent to tell me." She handed him the letter quite simply. Ludovic read the rather set, conventional phrases in which a French nun asked Rosamund's prayers for the repose of the soul of her old friend. She had been ready to go for a long while. "Yes," said Ludovic, "I remember you told me about that." She wondered what the meeting with her husband would be like after all those years. She talked of dying just as though it was like going on a journey, to some place where people one knew were waiting. She was very matter-of-fact about it. "I think Catholics are like that." She said she would take messages from me to Francis in a sort of way. It comforted me very much. It made it seem not so very far away, after all. I wonder. She was silent for a moment, and then said almost timidly, "Do you think perhaps she's given the messages now?" "Who knows, my dear," said Ludovic Argent gently. Watching Rosamund, whose gaze was turned to the dim outline of the Welsh hills, he knew that he loved her, and told himself that he had always known it. Presently he told her, "I think I am not capable of any very strong feeling any more," said Rosamund almost childishly, and half apologetically. "I had to tell Morris that." "You don't care for him?" he asked quickly. "Oh no," said Rosamund. "Then may I try to make you care for me?" "Ludovic, I'll try and explain," said Rosamund, speaking with difficulty, and using his name for the first time. "It has seemed to me that there is only one way for anyone to learn anything, and that is through caring. Francie's love for God, whether one thinks it a mistaken sort or not, made her give up everything and go to the convent, as you know. And it nearly broke my heart, because it took her away from me, and I wanted her to be happy in my way and with me. When I went to see her after she'd actually entered, I knew that in some way she'd grown up. While I hadn't, I was still muddling about in chaos, while she'd found a definite anchor. I couldn't understand, and I felt further away from her than ever before. Then, when I went to the convent when she was ill, and they wouldn't let me go to her, I understood all she'd given up. You see, for Francie to do or say anything that would hurt me was the greatest sacrifice that she could ever have offered. When I was in the chapel then, I prayed that she might die. It was all such pain and despair as I can't describe, but afterwards, very slowly, I think I've understood a little. There is only one thing which counts, and that's loving, and loving is giving. Frances gave one way, her way, and taught me a very little of what it meant. But my way is not the same as hers. You are giving the things of the Spirit," said Ludovic. "I don't know," said Rosamund with a sort of sob. "But it's the only way of feeling that Francie and I are not so very far apart after all." From the garden below came the voices of Hazel's children, Dicky calling in a shrill, sweet treble. Rosamund gave a sudden smile, and then it died from her eyes in a rush of overwhelming loneliness. Ludovic's need was urgent, and he took his advantage. "Rosamund," he said entreatingly. Her gaze did not leave the far line of the horizon, but very slowly, without turning her head, she gave him her hand. Exeter, June, 1916. London, June, 1917. The End. Transcriber's notes: obvious typographical errors have been corrected. Inconsistencies in hyphenation have been standardized. Archaic or variant spelling has been retained. New original cover art included with this ebook is granted to the public domain. End of the Project Gutenberg ebook. The Pelicans updated editions will replace the previous one. The old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works, so the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the general terms of use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark, and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose, such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances, and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start, Full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works. By using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg, you agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark license available with this file or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General Terms of Use and Redistributing Project Gutenberg Trademark Electronic Works 1.a. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property, trademark/copyright, agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the Foundation or PGLOF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying, or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, we hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg trademark mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg trademark works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg trademark name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg trademark license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d. The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing or creating derivative works based on this work or any other Project Gutenberg trademark work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e. Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg, 1.e.1. The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, the full Project Gutenberg trademark license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg trademark work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.e.2. If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.3. If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg trademark license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.e.4. Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg trademark license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg trademark. 1.e.5. Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.e.1 with active links or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg trademark license. 1.e.6. You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg trademark work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg trademark website, www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee, or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg trademark license as specified in paragraph 1.e.1. 1.e.7. Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying or distributing any Project Gutenberg trademark works unless you comply with paragraph 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.8. You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works provided that, you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg trademark works calculated using the method you already use to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4, Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing, or by email, within 30 days of receipt that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg trademark works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.f.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy, if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing from the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg trademark. Contact the Foundation as set forth in Section 3 below. 1.f1.f.1. Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg trademark collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects, such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2. Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages, except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg trademark electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs, and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the Foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive, or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3. Limited right of replacement or refund. If you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4. Except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3, this work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5. Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6. Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the Foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the Foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion, and distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs, and expenses, including legal fees, that arise directly or indirectly from any of the following which you do or cause to occur. A. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg trademark work. B. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg trademark work, and C. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg trademark. Project Gutenberg trademark is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged, and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg trademark's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg trademark collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg trademark and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, see sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a nonprofit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the state of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's IN or Federal Tax Identification Number is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, Utah 841-16801-596-1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact. Section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg trademark depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form accessible by the widest array of equipment, including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork, and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways, including checks, online payments, and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg trademark electronic works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the Project Gutenberg trademark concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, he produced and distributed Project Gutenberg trademark ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg trademark ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg trademark, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks. The Pelicans I2 3 4 V 6 7 8 9 X X X I X X I X X I X X I X X I X triple X. The full Project Gutenberg license 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 21 22 23 24 25 26 27 28 29 30 31 32 33 34 35 36 37 38 39 40 41 42 43 44 45 46 47 48 49 50 51 52 53 54 55 56 57 58 59 60 61 62 63 64 65 66 67 68 69 70 71 72 73 74 75 76 77 78 79 80 81 82 83 84 85 86 87 88 89 90 91 92 93 94 95 96 97 98 99 100 101 102 103 104 105 106 107 108 109 110 111 112 113 114 115 116 117 118 119 120 121 122 123 124 125 126 127 128 129 130 131 133 134 135 136 137 138 139 140 141 142 143 144 145 146 147 148 149 150 151 152 153 154 155 156 157 158 159 160 161 162 163 164 165 166 167 168 169 170 171 172 173 174 175 176 177 178 179 180 181 182 183 184 185 186 187 188 189 190 191 192 193 194 195 196 197 198 199 200 201 202 203 204 205 206 207 208 209 210 211 212 213 214 215 216 217 218 219 220 221 222 223 224 225 226 227 228 229 230 231 232 233 234 235 236 237 238 239 240 241 242 243 244 245 246 247 248 249 250 251 252 253 254 255 256 257 258 259 260 261 262 263 264 265 266 267 268 269 270 271 272 273 274 275 276 277 278 279 280 281 282 283 284 285 286 287 288 289 290 291 292 293 294 295 296 297 298 299 300 301 302 303 304 305 306 307 308 309 310 311 312 313 314 315 316 317 318 319 320 321 322 323 324 325 326 327 328 329 330 331 332 333 334 335 336 337 338 339 340 341 342 343 344 345 346 347 348 349 350 351 352 353 354 355 356 357 358